Stalin was born on the 18th of December 1878 in the town of Gori, in what is today the country of Georgia. He was baptized on the 29th of December 1878 and christened Yosef, but those close to him called him So-So. His parents were Ekaterina and Bessarion Jugashvili. He was the third child, but the previous two had died in infancy. Stalin's father, Bessarion, was a shoemaker and owned a workshop that at one point employed as many as 10 people, but which slid into ruin as Stalin grew up. Besso had specialized in producing traditional Georgian footwear and did not produce the European-style shoes that were becoming increasingly fashionable. This, combined with the deaths of his previous two infant sons, precipitated his decline into alcoholism. The family found themselves living in poverty. The couple had to leave their home and moved into 9 different rented rooms over 10 years. Bessarion also became violent towards his family. To escape the abusive relationship, Keke took Stalin and moved into the house of a family friend, Father Christopher Charkviani. She worked as a house cleaner and launderer for several local families who were sympathetic to her plight. Keke was a strict but affectionate mother to Stalin. She was a devout Christian, and both she and her son regularly attended church services. In 1884, Stalin contracted smallpox, which left him with facial pox scars for the rest of his life. Charkviani's teenage sons taught Stalin the Russian language. Keke was determined to send her son to school, something that none of the family had previously achieved. In late 1888, when Stalin was 10, he enrolled at the Gori Church School. This was normally reserved for the children of clergy, but Charkviani ensured that Stalin received a place by claiming that the boy was the son of a deacon. This may be the reason why, in 1934, Stalin claimed to have been the son of a priest. There were many local rumors that Besso was not Stalin's real father, which in later life Stalin himself encouraged. Stalin biographer Simon Sebag Montefiore nonetheless thought it likely that Besso was the father, in part due to the strong physical resemblance that they shared. Besso eventually attacked a policeman while drunk, which resulted in the authorities ejecting him from Gori. He moved to Tiflis, where he worked at the Adelkanov shoe factory. Although Keke was poor, she ensured that her son was well dressed when he went to school, likely through the financial support of family friends. As a child, Stalin exhibited a number of idiosyncrasies. When happy, he would for instance jump around on one leg while clicking his fingers and yelling aloud. He excelled academically, and also displayed talent in painting and drama classes. He began writing poetry, 29, and was a fan of the work of Georgian nationalist writer Raphael Eristavi. 30. He was also a choir boy, singing both in church and at local weddings. A childhood friend of Stalin's later recalled that he was the best but also the naughtiest pupil in the class. He and his friends formed a gang, and often fought with other local children. He caused mischief. In one incident, he ignited explosive cartridges in a shop, and in another he tied a pan to the tail of a woman's pet cat. When Stalin was 12, he was seriously injured after having been hit by a phaeton. He was hospitalized in Tiflis for several months, and sustained a lifelong disability to his left arm. His father subsequently kidnapped him and enrolled him as an apprentice cobbler in the factory. This would be Stalin's only experience as a worker. According to Stalin's biographer Robert Service, this was Stalin's first experience with capitalism, and it was raw, harsh and dispiriting. Several priests from Gori retrieved the boy, after which Besso cut all contact with his wife and son. In February 1892, Stalin's school teachers took him and the other pupils to witness the public hanging of several peasant bandits. Stalin and his friends sympathized with the condemned. The event left a deep and lasting impression on him. Stalin had decided that he wanted to become a local administrator so that he could deal with the problems of poverty that affected the population around Gori. Despite his Christian upbringing, he had become an atheist after contemplating the problem of evil and learning about evolution through Charles Darwin's On the Origin of Species. Tiflis Seminary. In July 1893, Stalin passed his exams and his teachers recommended him to the Tiflis Seminary. Keke took him to the city, where they rented a room. Stalin applied for a scholarship to enable him to attend the school. They accepted him as a half-boarder, meaning that he was required to pay a reduced fee of 40 rubles a year. This was still a substantial sum for his mother, and he was likely financially assisted once more by family friends. He officially enrolled at the school in August 1894. Here he joined 600 trainee priests, who boarded in dormitories containing between 20 and 30 beds. Stalin was set apart by being 3 years older than most of the other first-year students, although a number of his fellow students had also attended the Gori Church School. At Tiflis, Stalin was again an academically successful pupil, gaining high grades in his subjects. Among the subjects taught at the seminary were Russian literature, secular history, mathematics, Latin, Greek, Church, Slavonic singing, Georgian Emeritian singing, and Holy Scripture. As students progressed, they were taught more concentrated theological subjects such as ecclesiastical history, liturgy, homiletics, comparative theology, moral theology, practical pastoral work, didactics, and church singing. To earn money, he sang in a choir, with his father sometimes asking him for his earnings. During the holidays he would return to Gori to spend time with his mother. Tiflis was a multi-ethnic city in which Georgians were a minority. The seminary was controlled by the Georgian Orthodox Church, which was part of the Russian Orthodox Church and subordinate to the ecclesiastical authorities in St. Petersburg. The priests employed to work there were largely reactionary, anti-Semitic Russian nationalists. They banned the speaking of Georgian by pupils, insisting that Russian be used at all times. Stalin was, however, proud to be Georgian. He continued writing poetry, and took several of his poems to the office of the newspaper Ivoria, Georgia. There they were read by Ilya Chavchavadze, who liked him and ensured that 5 were published in the newspaper. Each was published under the pseudonym of Sozolo. Thematically, they dealt with topics like nature, land, and patriotism. According to Montefiore, they became minor Georgian classics, and were included in various anthologies of Georgian poetry over the coming years. Montefiore was of the view that their romantic imagery was derivative, but the beauty lay in the delicacy and purity of rhythm and language. Similarly, Service felt that in the original Georgian language these poems had a linguistic purity recognized by all. Over his years at the seminary, Stalin lost interest in many of his studies and his grades began to drop. He grew his hair long in an act of rebellion against the school's rules. Seminary records contain complaints that he declared himself an atheist, chatted in class, was late for meals, and refused to doff his hat to monks. He was repeatedly confined to a cell for his rebellious behavior. He had joined a forbidden book club, the Cheap Library, which was active at the school. Among the authors whom he read in this period were Emile Zola, Nikolai Nekrasov, Nikolai Gogol, Anton Chekhov, Leo Tolstoy, Mikhail Saltykov-Shchedrin, Friedrich Schiller, Guy de Maupassant, Honoré de Balzac, and William Makepeace Thackeray. 65. Particularly influential was Nikolai Chernyshevsky's 1863 pro-revolutionary novel What Is to Be Done. Another influential text was Alexander Kaspagy's The Patricide, with Stalin adopting the nickname Koba, from that of the book's bandit protagonist. These works of fiction were supplemented with the writings of Plato and books on Russian and French history. He also read Capital, the 1867 book by German sociological theorist Karl Marx, and tried learning German so that he could read the works of Marx and his collaborator Friedrich Engels in the language in which they were originally written. He had soon devoted himself to Marxism, the socio-political theory that Marx and Engels had developed. Marxism provided him with a new way of interpreting the world. The ideology was on the rise in Georgia, one of various forms of socialism then developing in opposition to the governing Tsarist authorities. At night, he attended secret meetings of local workers, most of whom were Russian. He was introduced to Silabistro Silva Gibladze, the Marxist founder of Mesam Dasi, Third Group, a Georgian socialist group. One of his poems was published in the group's newspaper, K. Vali. Stalin found many socialists active in the Russian Empire to be too moderate, but was attracted by the writings of a Marxist who used the pseudonym of Tulin. This was Vladimir Lenin. It is also possible that he had pursued romantic and sexual relationships with women in Tiflis. Years later, there was some suggestion that he might have fathered a girl named Praskovia Pasha Mikhailovskaya around this period. In April 1899, Stalin left the seminary at the end of term and never returned, although the school encouraged him to come back. Through his years of attendance, he had received a classical education but had not qualified as a priest. In later years, he sought to glamorize his leaving, claiming that he had been expelled from the seminary for his revolutionary activities.